In 6.4, we're going to be talking about something called absolute value. And the most important idea here is to understand the words absolute value. The definition is that absolute value of a number is the distance between the number and zero on a number line. One important hint that I really want you to know, because I'm sure I'll say it several times while we work on absolute value, is that the absolute value of a number will never be a negative number, because all absolute value is telling us is the distance or how far away from zero the number is. So you can be talking about a negative number, and we'll do lots of examples where that's true, but how far away the number is from zero will always be a positive amount, because it's just telling us how far it is from that number to zero, no matter whether it's a negative or a positive number. And that's going to make more sense as you practice it, but I want you to have that hint written down because it will become important later on. These are the absolute value symbols that we use. They look like parallel lines around the number. So really this is actually asking us a question. And the question that's going to come to mind when you see these symbols here is how far away from zero is whatever number is in here. So in this particular case, this symbol, the absolute value symbol, is actually asking how far away from zero is -2. And the answer, of course, is that -2 is 2 away from 0 on the number line. So the final answer is 2. And going back to the hint that we just talked about, remember the answer when we talk about absolute value will never be a negative number, because it's simply the distance away from 0 that number inside it is. And notice that we don't put the symbol in our answer, because it would just be like asking the question over again. So we don't want to do that. We just put our final answer of 2 there. For example 1, we're going to be finding the absolute value of some numbers. So letter A asks us to find the absolute value of 3. And to do that, we're just going to take a quick look at a number line. You won't always have to use the number line, but we're going to first just kind of plot that. So we're talking about right here on the number line. And then to figure out the absolute value, remember that's the distance away from 0 that the number is. So this is 1, 2, 3 spots away from 0. So that means that the absolute value of 3, remember that's what it's kind of asking us the question, is just plain old 3. For example 2, we're looking for the absolute value of -2.5. And again, we're going to start by using a number line. And this time I set my number line up to go still by -1, -2, -3, but I also included the half marks on there. So those are the ones actually labeled just to make it a little easier to see. But -2.5 would be right here. And again, I'm finding my distance to 0. So here I would be halfway would be at -2, and then it would be up to the -1, and then to the 0. So this is half right here. This is another whole jump, and this is another whole jump to get me to 0. So altogether, this is going to be a total of 2.5 spots away from 0. So when you see the question, what is the absolute value of -2.5, the answer is just 2.5. And again, it's positive because it's just the distance away from 0. So one thing you're going to have to be careful for when you're doing absolute value is that you don't confuse it with opposites, because in this case it would look like an opposite. But in example A, when it was a positive number inside here, then you don't just want to make it the opposite out here, because all absolute value is positive. For the on your own problems, you are finding the absolute value. You do not need to do a number line unless it would help you find the distance away from 0. But if you're getting the hang of it without the number line and you're just asking yourself questions like how far away is 8 from 0 and you're able to answer that, then you won't have to do a number line. For example 2, we're going to be comparing values, and the key here is that values might not just be the numbers themselves. So when we compare 2 and the absolute value of -5, we're going to take a look at them on a number line, again, just till we get the hang of it. And 2 is literally just 2 on the number line here, because there's no absolute value sign or anything like that. But then over here, it's the absolute value of -5. So we're saying how far away from 0 is -5. Well, I didn't show it on the number line, but we could count to the left of this number line if it were to continue on all the way till we got to the number -5, and we can figure out that that means that it is actually 5 spots away from 0. And so the value here, because remember that's what we're dealing with, value of the absolute value of -5 is actually just 5. So if I put that on there and we compare them, then that means our final answer would look something like that. 2 is less than, because it's to the left here, it's less than the absolute value of -5. On this on your own, again, you're not required to use a number line, but to just kind of get you started on this, for number 7, for instance, what I would like to see on your paper is the original statement, so the absolute value of -4, and we're going to be comparing that to -2. So on your paper, what you should be doing also is underneath that, you should recognize that the absolute value of -4, or how far away from 0 is -4, is actually 4 spots away. And then -2 is just the plain number -2 because it's not the absolute value sign. And 4 is obviously a positive number here now, and so it would be a greater value than -2. So then you would go into your original statement and put that the absolute value of -4 is greater than -2. Basically what that means is that this number here, the absolute value of -4, is farther away from 0 than this number is. For example 3, we're going to look at a real-life application, and the table here shows the elevations of several animals in feet, and they want to know, first of all, which animal is the deepest. To explain, we're going to go ahead and plot those on a number line, and this time we're going to use a vertical or up and down number line, just since we're talking about deepest and elevation, which usually goes up and down. So go ahead and plot these points. So to answer the question, we're looking for which animal is the deepest, so we would look at the bottom of the number line, because as we go the farther down, you're going deeper, and so we can see right here that the shrimp is the deepest animal because it's the farthest away from 0. Then part B wants to know, is the shark or the sea lion closer to sea level? And here's where we're going to start looking at absolute value. So the shark is at -4 feet, and then the sea lion is at 5 feet. But really, when we're saying closer to sea level, this would be 0, so we're trying to figure out which is closer. So basically what we're doing here is finding the absolute value of each of these numbers and then comparing them. And so -4, of course, is 4 feet away from 0, and 5 is just 5 feet away from 0. It doesn't really matter in this case which side of the number line they're on, positive or negative, because we're just talking distance. And so 4 is less than 5, which means that this is closer. So we would say that the shark is closer to sea level. You don't have to draw a new number line for this one, just use the one we did in example 3 to answer this question.